then gasped. Robin and Alan stopped to listen. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "You will always find love by your own hands." Robin and Alan burst out laughing and continued on. Will hurried after them. His face was still bright pink when he caught up. The three men reached the edge of the forest and entered the enormous camp of King Richard Coeur de Lion's army. Beyond the army loomed the French castle to which they had been laying siege for the past 7 days. The banners of the French lord still flew above the battlements, but the stone walls of the fortress were blackened and her gates scarred, though still intact. As the three men wound through the army camp, Robin began to distribute some of their kill from the morning's hunt. He gave a quail to one man who'd shared a meal with him a few nights before, and offered a rabbit to a Fletcher, receiving a stack of arrows in return. Some of the meat he gave for no apparent reason, sharing a good word and a laugh with the surprised recipient. After 10 years he had learnt that there were 2 things an archer in the king's army should never have in short supply: arrows and the goodwill of his fellow soldiers. By the time he, Will, and Alan had reached the embers of their campfire, they had just enough game left to feed themselves. Before they could even get their meat on spits, though, they were joined by young Jamoan, a foot soldier they had befriended during their return from the Holy Land. He was gangly and pale, and he regarded them now with an apology in his eyes. "Archers are culter-ranked." Alan stared ruefully at his breakfast. "Bloody typical." Robin merely shrugged and set the meat aside. "It's all right, boys. Hide it well. We'll have it for supper instead." He reached for his armor. He began to suit up for battle. Marion of Locksley should have been asleep, dreaming of her husband's return from Richard's crusade. The time she and Robert of Locksley had shared as husband and wife had been all too brief, though the memory of their wedding night was still enough, after all these years, to bring a smile to her lips and heat to her cheeks. To relive that bliss, even if in a mere dream, would have been a balm for her uneasy heart. Instead, she tossed and turned, listening to the sounds of the night. The sweet tones of a nightjar, the resonant hoot of a nearby owl, the howl of a wolf, the soft rustle of countless leaves as a gentle wind stirred the boughs of Sherwood Forest, beyond the walls of Pepper Harrow, the Locksley home. She lived with her husband's father, Sir Walter Locksley, a great man in his day, now reduced by age and blindness to awaiting the return of his son from war. She wondered if he was awake as well, if it was some whisper of fate, some purposeful foreboding that kept her from sleep. She considered going to check on the old man. Deciding against it, she rose and crossed to the narrow window that looked out from her bedchamber towards the Locksley fields and the wood beyond. Doing so, she beheld something puzzling. It began as a flicker of shadow at the edge of Sherwood Forest, and then a second. Soon there were nearly a dozen of them, animals moving with purpose and stealth across the fields toward the town of Nottingham. She spied a badger, a boar, and a fox, a wolf, a sheep, and a bear, as unnatural a company of creatures as she could imagine. Comprehension came to her just as the alarm bell in the town watchtower began to toll. "They're coming," the sentinel called, his voice echoing from the village. Marion rushed to her door and out into the corridor. She could hear some in Nottingham raising the alarm, while others shouted angrily at the raiders in their fields. Just as she reached Sir Walter's chamber, she met up with Gaffer Tom, who had worked here at the Locksley house since well before Marion's marriage to Robert. Pausing at Walter's door, she heard the old man within. He was mumbling to himself and moving about. Marion pushed the door open. Sir Walter Locksley might have been blind, but as soon as she and Tom entered, Walter turned toward them unerringly, his sword in hand. He was still tall and lean, despite his years, and the fearsome look on his face would have given pause to any intruder. "Don't be foolish, Walter," Marion told him. "You can do nothing for them." It broke her heart to speak to him so.